So have you ever had an easier scout of the Division II team?
Oh, you know, so there is a new coach there, so I'm not totally sure what's going to happen.
How do you pick his brain? Like, what have you done to try and do you have files on all the players and everything? I mean, do you kind of know what to expect from every player, or how do you use him to your advantage?
Hopefully, when you have a scout, no secret, Coach Jackson coached a lot of these players and recruited all of these guys, so he's very familiar with them. But hopefully, regardless of who we play, we have pretty good familiarity somehow with that team. So we pick his brain as much as we would any other team that we would play.
Explain, if you would, Lorenzo, how it came to be that you rotate the D2 schools in the state for your exhibitions. And is that something you set out on doing, or just felt you should?
I actually forgot exactly how it came about, but I know it's something that we kind of fell into, that we thought, because, you know, all of them were calling, you know, hey, we'd like to play. And especially when they stopped the exhibition games, I shouldn't say the exhibition games, Athletes in Action, Marathon Oil, all those teams, once they put a stop to that, it made the most sense probably to go with the D2 teams and NAIA teams. But, you know, how do you do it without upsetting? You know, we don't wake up every morning and wonder how we're not going to upset these teams, but at the same time we wanted to kind of spread it around a little bit.
Is it one of those deals where you have everything to lose as the big power that plays the team like this?
Not at all, to me. Now, people watching the game, they may look at it that way. This is an exhibition game. It's something that we have an opportunity to do some things that we may not have when we play our opener November 11th. So this is a time you take to do them. You get 2 of these, or 2 scrimmages, or a scrimmage at an exhibition game. And when we have our scrimmages that's closed to the public, we try all sorts of combinations and things that we wouldn't dare try in a regular game. So, and that's what this is for. So sure, we want to be our best every game, but you're also trying to use this to learn some things about your team and make some improvements. I do think it's great that we're playing such an experienced team like this. Some of the exhibition teams that you played before weren't as organized before they changed the rule. Athletes in Action was, though. They were good. They were organized. They ran stuff, and they were a group. But some of the other teams, you know, called 7 or 8 guys 3 days before you play, hey, show up at Washington, and you don't get as much out of that. When you play against a team like we're playing tomorrow, the defending champs, national champs, they're not going to be intimidated. They know how to win. It's going to be a great game for us in preparation for our season, and that's what you want. You want to prepare for your season and use these games to do that.
How important is it to win the game? I mean, Brad mentioned last year SPU going down to Arizona, that has been brought up.
In terms of, you know, we're playing backgammon at the house. I don't want to lose to my wife, so I don't ever, and I rarely do, by the way. You never want to lose, but you're also going out trying to make improvements out there. Now, sometimes you lose a game like this, maybe a team that most people would say you're supposed to win at home. Maybe it's a sign of things to come. In other situations, it can serve as a wake-up call, or you got accomplished the things you wanted to get accomplished. You wouldn't play those combinations that you played in that exhibition game later on. I remember being part of a national championship team. We lost our exhibition game. We did, came back and won the whole thing. So I don't think we have to put all of our stock into what happens in these exhibition games. It's a learning situation.
Can you give us an example of something that you might want to try tomorrow that you would dare try during the season?
Sometimes players play longer. You know, a lot like the NBA. The NBA they play certain combinations in exhibition season just to see where a player's at. Sometimes they'll play young players 30 minutes in a game, and those guys, when the season starts, they don't play the first 10 games. They don't even get on the floor, but they want to play them to see how good they really are in a real game. Sometimes you might do that in a game. There may be some things you've been working on in practice that look good in practice, good in theory, but now when you go up against another team, we're not doing that. We tried that in the exhibition game. That's the time to work on those things, to experiment.
And you did, like, Andrew played a lot, and Gennard played a lot in the exhibition game last year. I look at a guy like Gilles. Is that a game where you might make a decision whether he's going to redshirt?
Gilles and Paris are not able to play because they are transfers. That's a different kind of red shirt than the others have been. But yeah, those guys have been practicing, and you know, you want to give them an opportunity to get out there and just see what it's like when they're playing. Sometimes that decision has already been made that they're going to redshirt also.
Do you like planning to do as much experimenting this year, seeing as you had the summer and you went to overseas and you had the 5 or 6 games there? So do you plan to use this one much to experiment, or just to look, we're gonna hit this ground running?
This is more personnel experimentation in this game as opposed to what you're going to do. The other thing is you're going to play a baseline form of basketball, somewhat like the spring football game. You're not going out there throwing everything out there that you're going to be doing in the regular season. You're going to go play with your basic defense, your basic offense, and see if you can sustain it in this sort of game, and try to go back to the drawing board and make the necessary adjustments after you do this. But we won't do some of the more advanced things we'll do in this particular game. So that makes it different as well.
Are there benefits or drawbacks to having an exhibition game this far out from when the actual season opener is?
I don't think so. I do wish it were reversed though, but it didn't work out that way, that we could play our scrimmage first. Because the scrimmage is when you can really be a mad scientist and try anything, you know. And you can do the same thing here, but the scrimmage, you can literally stop it. Just blow the whistle. Coach, can we stop it for a second? Come here, fellas, you know. You can work on whatever you want. You can say, all right, let's play another quarter, and this time you're gonna play zone the whole time. All right, press us this next 5 minutes. Press us. You can't do that in the exhibition game. You could, but I don't know if they listen. You could try. So you prefer to play a scrimmage first and then the exhibition game, but it's reversed this time. That's fine. Normally we would play a couple of inter-squad games prior to these 2 contests, but being so early, we've only been able to have one of those. That's the only difference.
Is it because of Western schedule that it's so early?
I don't remember.
Are Paris and Gilles, can they play tomorrow night?
No, they transfer, so
They
if
can't play
you
even though-
transfer, it's illegal. You can't do it.
Even in an exhibition? Okay.
Scrimmage, nothing, they can't. All they can do is practice.
Where do you think the high post offensive implementation is, and how much do you think that the trip helped?
Oh, the trip helped immensely. Really helped. Where it is now is, I believe tomorrow night we'll be able to go out and play and be able to function out of it. I think the guys are just now starting to take ownership of it, and kind of like you give somebody a recipe and now they take it and they add their own little flavor to it. And our guys are just starting to do that a little bit. So is it going to be the finished product? Absolutely not. But we will be able to go out there, I think, and play out of it right now. And a lot of times at this part of the year, it's hard to play out of it because you're so, you know, you turn the ball over quite a bit, and we may turn the ball over tomorrow night too, but I just feel like we're further along where we have a decent understanding to run it.
You often talk about how it often takes new players, new schemes until about December, January, it's working well. You expect to be that way with this offense?
I think it'll still take December to where guys just, to give you an example, when we start teaching our defense and we start breaking our defense down earlier in the year, we usually have several returners go out and kind of demonstrate. And you watch, and I'm talking about high school kids that have played in great programs that taught defense at a high level. You get out there and you watch our guys, they just move. I mean, it's just, they're in sync and they're all in, I mean, it's like the band out there. Every move is the same at the same time. You can just see it. But then the others get out there and they're off. They're just off. Their technique is off. And that's kind of how this offense is. Early, your technique is kind of off, and you got to run it and run it and run it, and then everybody becomes in sync. And you're able to read all the different situations, know all of the counters, and use them when appropriate. And that probably will happen by December. Hopefully closer to December 1st than December 31st.
Lorenzo, is it beneficial to this change? Because I know you talked about how it was important that you guys got to go to Europe and work on this offense. Does it also help that the only people that you're really having to integrate as new players would be the ones that are going to have to sit out the year anyway?
Say that again, Chris. Sorry.
Just the whole idea that you're not really having to integrate a lot of brand new people into something that you're already kind of changing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the two players are the two transfers, so they can't play anyway.
Right.
They're gonna have a whole year to learn
Right.
these things, whereas, like you said, with the band, you've got a lot of guys that are coming back. Everyone comes back at least with a fundamental understanding of what you're asking.
Well, not totally, Chris, because we've never run this exclusively. We've always used it as a secondary type of offense, and we use it sometimes when our motion wasn't giving us what we needed. So we use it then. After timeout, we call it. So this is kind of new for everyone because of the way we're using it. Because this is it right here. There is no second offense. This is it. That makes sense?
Yeah, I just,
Yeah.
did you implement any part of this offense last year? Because you
Not
said that
last
there
year.
was, not last year.
2009 and 2010. Those 2 years, we used the basic shell of it. But Scott, Abdul, those guys were on the team then. The stuff we're doing now, they've never done before. They've just, some of it I should say, but not in its entirety. They hadn't done.
I know you can't probably say this until the games are being played, but have you found just through practice and whatnot that it's good to have, just like you said, just the one offense to worry about, as opposed to maybe having your motion and then maybe a couple, like you said, shell type things that you do? Does it help to have maybe a single focus?
There's no question, and that was one of the problems with it, you know. When Coach Herrick and I first talked this late spring about, you know, him coming up, spending some time with us, the thing he finally just said, he didn't tell me before. I said, we were trying to run our motion and trying to use a high post. I said, but you can't do both. He says, nope, you can't. And he's right, you can't. You gotta do one or the other. We would run our motion and then supplement it with some sets. That's fine. We would run the high post and supplement that with some sets. But the reads and the motion, you know, there's so much there, and now you're reading the high post. There are two different ways of approaching offense. And so you're not gonna be good at both, and that's what we've tried before. And we weren't good at, we still were okay in the motion, but the high post just wasn't as effective as it needed to be. So now that we're just concentrating on this, Coach would always say, easy to scout, hard to stop. So what they call it student body right, student body left. You know, everybody knows it's coming, but if you execute it properly, it can still be effective if you're spending a lot of time on it, working on it.
So you just thought the old offense was too inconsistent and wanted to go to something different?
Several reasons, Jim. One was every year you look at your personnel. Now before our motion, we saw our personnel and we would tweak it. So when Brandon Roy was here, we did it where he had the ball in his hand quite a bit, and we we spread the floor and let him make the decisions. He was the decision maker more. With Tony Roden and Terrence Ross, we would use it and post those guys up a lot in it. So same offense, but just, emphasized or highlighted some other points in it. This is an entirely different offense because I looked at our personnel and I didn't think our personnel suited. I didn't think we could tweak it enough to be effective in it with our personnel. But also understand this is something that I've always wanted to do. We ran this our first year here, but we weren't a very good team, and I don't know if it mattered what we ran that year, but it didn't work, so I kind of abandoned it. But the first head job that I took, this is what we ran at Pepperdine. Got away from it at St. Louis. I didn't think our personnel suited it. Then we come here to Washington, we run it our first year, we got away from it, then went back to it a little bit, 09, 010. This is always wanted to do. So I think the personnel suits it better. And then I thought there were too many times, especially down the stretch, last 4 or 5 minutes of the game, that we ended up just taking, bad shots. Or we would call sets, and it was too much looking over here on the side. Got us out of rhythm in time. I think this allows us to play more sound basketball down the stretch offensively. So those are the reasons that we've made the change.
So if personnel changes, you go back to motion in 2 or 3
No.
years or something like that?
We could, yeah. If it were the NBA where you draft who you want to draft and you can hand pick them and do that, well then you can just do what you want to do. We try to recruit to our system. We try to. But every now and then, the best players, give me an example. John Brockman wasn't the perfect guy for our motion, but he's so good a player. He still became the second leading scorer in the history of the school in that. John would have been more ideal actually in the high post. So you have to take, now all of a sudden there's John and then there's several others that better than anyone you can get. Well, now maybe you got to make a change. You got to adjust what you're doing there. Can't be so stubborn that you don't make that change. But from here on out, we will try to recruit so that our personnel fits what we're trying to run with this. Because again, I've always believed in this, but got away from it. We had Nate, Will Conroy, Trey, Brandon, those guys were so good off the dribble at making plays that it just fit them very well. And we go to the tournament 04, we go 05, we go 06, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of deal. And then finally we've come to this point where this is what we want to do. Now after the game tomorrow, we may go back to the motion. It's horrible.
You think NJ is going to be better offensively this year?
Do I think what is?
NJ?
When you say offensively, tell me what you mean by that.
Will
Can he score more points?
Will he be
Yes.
better offensively?
You can't just ask it like that. Is
Well, I
gonna
mean, will he be more of a threat than he has been in the past?
Is he going to score more points, or is he going to be more of a threat?
Well,
What if he wasn't a threat and he was getting 20 a game?
Well, I don't think you can be more of a threat and get 20
You become a
game.
threat all of a sudden
You're
if
a
you
threat
get 20 a
then.
game. You know, there are guys that go out and they're just junkyard dogs and they average double figures. Bobby Jones, we ran one play for him in 4 years, and he hit the side of the backboard. We ran the play. One time we ran it. He averaged double figures 3 years because he just found ways to score. But I wouldn't say that he was an offensive threat, but he was a heck of a player. Played in the NBA, so that's why I'm asking you.
So it's not like he's going to be like Kareem and posting up and hitting sky hooks all of a sudden or anything like that.
That would be sweet. No, I don't think that's his game. Dikembe Mutombo, did he make the All-Star team ever? Anybody know?
Probably.
Yeah,
Was he ever an All-Star? I don't think he was a go-to guy. I don't think he was a guy that, we're gonna have to triple team him and double team him, because once he gets the ball, I don't think that was his game, but he still found ways to score. And I think that's how Aziz is.
Can you talk a little bit about camp, maybe some guys that jumped out, have really stepped up, made an improvement?
I think Sean Kemp and Jannard Giroux have made big strides
And by the way, I didn't think you'd give me any names.
from last year. Yeah, every once in a while, surprise you, I guess.
How've they improved, what have they done to step up? What's been the difference?
They are much more confident, have much more of an understanding of what's going on, and they've been more productive.
Can you be more specific, like Sean, is it low post, is it just running out of the high post, is it rebounding jump stuff?
Sean's, he always had it there, but wasn't as confident for whatever reason, but he has a nice little shot, nice little 15, 17-foot shot. He's been knocking down, and, you know, down on the block, he's a threat. He's a threat down there, he gets the ball. But then defensively, we don't notice him as much as being out of position. He's more in position than not right now. So those are ways that he's improved.
He also seems, you know, I remember seeing him last year, I can't remember which game, but he really came in and locked the guy down and showed some nasty down there too. Is that just from getting confident?
Yeah, and understanding what he's supposed to be doing. So I keep saying, he hadn't played for 2 years when he was here last year. And it's hard to judge somebody if they haven't played in 2 years, unless they're Michael Jordan.
And Jannard, is it just a matter of him growing into his body, getting
Yeah, and
coordinated?
Jannard sometimes would have activity with no achievement. Through the legs once, through the legs twice. Whoa, he's 6'10", did you see that behind the back? Miss. So now he's making more of those. So that's where his improvement has come from, and he's playing with more confidence.
Lorenzo, with Sean, especially in Europe, did that really boost his confidence? Because it sounded like he had maybe a game-winning shot or did some things. Did that help him?
Part of it did, but I think getting in shape helped him too. And being under, you know, in a system where he's learned, I think that's helped. There, you know, a lot of freshmen that even when they're in shape, they lose confidence or don't have confidence because the game is much more, it's faster. But then as time progresses and they mature and they learn, they're a different player. That didn't hurt him being able to hit a couple of those big shots down the stretch, but in order for him to have enough confidence to do that in the first place, he had to be in better condition with a better mindset and a better understanding of what we were doing.
Has he been best at the center position, or do you think you can use him at the 4 at the same time on the floor with Aziz?
So again, when there's not one thing we do in our system that the 4 and the 5 don't do. They're interchangeable. So it's a big, so it's not a 4 or a 5. The difference, the only difference is what happens on the defensive end. That's when you determine. It's not the 4 or the 5, it's who can guard the other team's mobile 4. So, you know, the running inside joke, but that's kind of how we use it, is whoever is at the 4 needs to be able to guard Richard Kuksix. That's how we said it. Who's a 6'6", three-point deluxe shooter that's all over the place. You got to be able to get through screens, back screens, and staggers and doubles. You got to be able to chase that guy around and guard him. If you can't guard him, you have to have a guy that can. So if you have Aziz is not the guy to guard him. So the guy with Aziz has to be able to guard him, or you can't play him together. You have to play zone. That's what you'd have to do. So, if we're a zone team, if a guy was so good offensively but he couldn't do that, we'd play a lot more zone because we would need his offense. But that's the difference. So can Aziz and Sean play together? They have in practice. And if we're playing, here's the other way. We're playing against a team like UCLA where their bigs are around the basket a lot. You're good. If their two bigs aren't running around shooting threes and aren't as mobile, yeah, but offensively, that has nothing to do with if they can play together. That part's easy to offense, because they both do the same things.
Last summer, you mentioned that Scott Suggs was having a great off-season. Has he picked up where he's left off? Is he better than he was a year ago? Where is Scott right now?
Sean is playing,
Scott.
Scott, I'm sorry, yeah, thanks. Scott's playing with confidence like when he was in high school, to me. You know, he's defending well, he's just playing the game. So he's playing really well.
Lorenzo, you said something earlier that was intriguing to me. You talked about how the old adage was with the high post that it's easy to scout but hard to stop. With it
That's
being,
what Coach Herrick said.
with it being, it sounds like you're gonna obviously run it, and it sounds like Coach Godfrey's running it, but maybe hardly anybody else, but maybe you two. Has that maybe changed a little bit because people just don't see it anymore?
Which part has changed?
Just in terms of running that particular type of high post offense.
Why don't people run it?
No. Why, that maybe it's going to be harder to scout now just because people just don't see it as much anymore.
No, you can somewhat figure it out. You know, every team in our league that we play against, whether it's a motion team or they run the Princeton offense or they run a bunch of sets, you scout enough to where you have an idea what they're trying to do. But if the screen is set the proper way and the proper angle and you are patient, you come off the screen at the right time and the ball's in the right spot to deliver it to that person, you still have to guard it. You know, there's some things, how many people knew that Stockton and Malone were gonna run a two-man game? Nobody stopped it for 20 years or something like that, you know? So some things are just, it's still difficult to stop if you execute it the right way. Coach Montgomery over at Cal now is at Stanford. They've been running their sets forever, and everybody knows what they're gonna run. They're hard to stop, because the execution is at a high level.
Is there a reason why more teams don't run the high post? Is it just like an old-fashioned offense?
You could say it's an old-fashioned offense, but if there are 30 NBA teams, I bet you 25 of them run some form of it. They run some form of it. You know, Spencer watched us work out a few times, and he's saying, yeah, when you guys run that, this guy can come off. He knew it, but he didn't run it when he was here with us. But just being in the NBA, you see variations and forms of it. I don't know if anyone's running it in its entirety. There's some parts of it are like the triangle offense that Tex Winter ran. And everybody doesn't know how to teach it. So then you don't run it. You teach what you know what you teach.
Are you gonna limit anyone's minutes tomorrow? Like it's come back from injury or anything?
No. Oh, two separate questions. We're not limiting anyone's minutes, but Aziz bumped knees last week, so he's been sitting out of practice, but nothing serious. He'll be playing tomorrow.
Coach, last week when we talked to the players, they said that you had them do the mile before Europe, and they kind of squeamishly said they didn't know whether you were gonna make them do it for camp or not. Did they do it for camp?
The guys that weren't here did it, but they didn't have to repeat it. Again, this is a unique year because of the foreign tour. So the mile is always, we always run it the first day of school. It's kind of a summer motivation, just do what you want. But you're gonna run a mile the first day. So you better be in some type of condition. So this year there was no need for that. We played on a foreign tour, so we were already in condition. So it's not a form of punishment that we issue out every year.
It may not be a form of punishment, but I'm guessing some of them were really, they didn't have to do it again.
Oh, yeah. That mile is interesting. We've had guys that couldn't sleep the night before, calling me on the phone, what's one more time, what's the best way to make this? And they show up the day of the mile, they show up, they don't talk, they're just sitting around, they have one-word answers. How you doing? Fine. How's class? Good. And guys come back. When are you guys running the mile? Alumni. Guys, Will Conway, Brandon, those guys Brockman, Spencer, they show up and they want to see it. They want to see the guys run it, who makes it, who doesn't make it. So as much as they despise it, it's kind of like a tradition.
Lorenzo, I know everyone's focused on the offense for good reason, but has there been any change, or will people see any change in what you're doing defensively, and especially with including Coach Smith into the equation?
The change would be that we're going to be better than we were last year. And Coach Smith, again, he's really a really good addition. You know, him and Coach Jackson. Coach Smith is a really good addition overall, but defensively, he knows our system and has taught our system. So the drills that we're running now, the defensive drills, he can run any of them. He can lead it and run the whole drill, and he does it with a lot of energy, and he has that eye for it, so that definitely helps. But, you know, the defensive thing is something we talked to our team about. We're going to be on a mission to be better defensively. I think we will.
But biggest thing that you had to overcome maybe defensively from last year?
Containing the ball. As I name one, I'll end up naming 8 or 9. Consistency. And I always say, you put 4 all-stars on defense. Defensive all-stars. Defensive geniuses. You put one guy that makes a mistake, it looks like your defense is horrible. It really will. It'll look like a guy will get a wide open layup. What are they doing? It wasn't they, it was one guy. One guy let up one time. It looks like that possession, you played 0 defense. So we were too inconsistent last year defensively across the board. So that, what are they doing? That kept coming up because we just weren't consistent enough there. A lot of it had to do with guarding the ball. Some of it had to do with bad reads defensively. You were supposed to pick up a guy out on the wing, and you went and picked the guy up on the post. Poor decisions. Number of things.
Is that it?
Have you determined who will be in the game at power forward?
No.
Is it up? I mean, will like that be something that you go game to game and try to find somebody, or are you gonna?
Probably not game to game. Probably not game to game. Hopefully, once we start, that's it. But those guys are so close. It could be every 5 games. It could be all the way up until the conference, and then we make a change. But again, hopefully, from beginning to end, that's how it works out. You know, when, again, picking a starting lineup, sometimes you can go through and one of your better players just makes your team better when they come off the bench. And sometimes a starter is in the starting lineup because he just doesn't give you as much coming off the bench. He doesn't have the right mindset, come off the bench and instantly come in and bring in that energy. So sometimes that takes a while. But this will not take as long this year as other years in terms of picking our starting lineup.
And the guys vying for that spot would be, I would assume.
Sean, Desmond, Martin, and Jannard. Those would be the guys.
And that's the only spot that's open right now, I would think.
Unless somebody gets hurt. Yeah. But I'll tell you, there are a couple guys that the way they play sometimes, their body of work looks at you and says, so what are you going to do? You're going to make a change, aren't you? Because every day this guy's coming. He's, as I've said before, players make the decisions most of the time. It's not the coaches. And the worst thing you ever want is 3 or 4 guys fighting for a spot, and each guy gets his chance and doesn't do anything. You got to start all over again and give the first guy a chance. You don't want that. Go out and make your case, and just show I'm better than anyone else you have. Don't ask for a favor. That's the best way to go out and get minutes and get a starting spot.
All right, thanks. You guys have